Ululotak, Uvanga Kazuglana. Good afternoon. My name is Kazuglana or Barb Amarok. Thank you for joining today's event. I am very honored to assist as facilitator today for our presenter, Carol Sepalou. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that this event is being recorded for those unable to attend. We start out by acknowledging that those at our Troth Yetta campus in Fairbanks are on the unceded customary lands of the Dana people of the Tanana River. In Nome, we are on Inupiaq, Yupik, and Siberian Yupik lands. We honor the continued fight for the rights of First Peoples and stand together in solidarity and action. At the University of Alaska Fairbanks, we are growing into a socially just and caring institution of higher education. This ongoing speaker series titled Shine a Light, Promoting Conversations on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is designed to encourage understanding, build empathy, and engage us in thinking critically about our worldviews. The series is led by UAF's Northwest Campus, but like all great diversity efforts, there are many partnerships and collaborations. We thank the UAF Department of Equity and Compliance and the UAF Nanook Diversity and Action Center for teaming up with Northwest Campus to bring this series to reality. You can find the recordings on the Northwest Campus website under the Courses tab. This link will be added to the chat bar today. Also added to the chat bar are well health and counseling resources if you feel emotions or feel overwhelmed today. Today, Carol will share her experiences and messages. To provide some background, the Bering Strait region of Alaska has had one of the highest rates of suicide highest rates of suicide in the United States. We can ask why, but as Elsie Boudreau has shared, why not? When you consider the trauma and challenges Alaska's Indigenous communities have faced with the past 200 plus years of change after having lived here with successful social, educational, and justice systems for well over 10, excuse me, for well over 10,000 years. I have known Carol since she was born. Her mother has been a friend to me since the 1970s. Carol and her family are from St. Lawrence Island in the Bering Strait region, but have lived in Nome. I got to know Carol when in the 1990s she worked with the Nome Belts High School youth group, NNYLO, to give a presentation at the Alaska Federation of Natives Convention on Suicide Prevention. Since then, Carol has been an inspiring leader through her candid messages and her dedication to long distance running. In 2020, she was bestowed the prestigious AFN Woman of Courage Award. Please use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that Carol may address at the end of this presentation. You're more than welcome to use the chat feature, but please be sure to put your questions in the Q&A feature so that we don't miss them. Thank you. At this time, I will turn it over to Carol.
Thank you so much, Barb. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carol Sepalou, and my Yupik name is Noskakami. Yupiliston Noskakami. I come from St. Lawrence Island, the biggest island in between Russia and Alaska, and I was born and raised there in Slavonga. And I did not know that Barb knew me as a baby, so that's really interesting. My family moved to Nome when I was 8 years old, and I've lived here ever since then. And as Barb mentioned, as a teenager, I attempted to end my own life, and that's why today I have a permanent tracheostomy, and I've been wearing a mask since 1999. But uh, I I haven't let that stop me from living my life. It was in about the year 2010, I think, was when I was very inspired by my friend who's also a Native woman. She was running marathons all over the country, and I was watching and living vicariously through her Facebook posts. And I was very, I felt very motivated to start running myself. But I was very overweight, and emotionally and mentally, I wasn't very healthy. It was a very difficult beginning, taking that first step towards running, but it was in 2014 when I woke up at noon and the sun was shining through the curtains. I didn't want to get out of bed, but I told myself, Carol, you need to get up and do something. Why don't you go for a 2-mile run? How hard could that be? So at 233 pounds, I got up, I laced up my shoes, and I went for a run. But a couple blocks down the road, I completely ran out of breath and I couldn't run anymore. But I decided to walk the rest of the way and finish my 2-mile goal. And I decided to do that every day. It took about a year for me to build up the endurance and stamina to run the entire 2 miles without stopping to take a walking break. And I noticed how happier and healthier I became. So I decided to see how much farther I could go. It was in 2015 when I signed up for a local 8-mile race. I finished it. I thought if I could do 8, I could do 13. And I completed the half marathon, and all of a sudden I became obsessed with seeing how much farther I could go. And it hasn't been easy being a runner, not only as an Indigenous person, but as someone who maybe not look like a runner. I have a trach, and I often get mistaken as a patient who just got out of the hospital. When I first started running ultra marathons, I would go pick up my bib, and I remember one of my first 50Ks. I went to Park City, Utah. I went and got my bib, and the people were asking, "Oh, are you picking it up for your friend?" No, I'm running the 50K, and I remember the look on their faces. They were quite surprised that I would be running 30 miles. And I kind of felt uncomfortable, but I finished that race, and the feeling I got from people cheering for me was like, I felt incredible with the support I had compared to the doubt I got when I went to go pick up my bib. But I decided I'm a runner. No matter what I look like or no matter what my background is. And I wanted to see how much farther I could go. And Mariah, if you could show this video, I of my longest completed run.
Well done. Yes, yeah.
It took a lot of bravery for me to go that distance, and I think a lot of that braveness came from people who I really looked up to, other Indigenous long distance runners, and I also thought about my ancestors who were endurance runners themselves. And I want to tell a quick story of bravery. I know I've completed several ultra marathons already, and I think people would find it funny that I wasn't brave enough to explore some places around here in Nome. I every day I would go on a walk up Gold Hill during my lunch break. And I wasn't brave enough to go on the tundra alone across to the road, and I would always just turn around. But one day it had snowed a bit. I went on my walk and I found footprints, and I decided to follow them. And it was then when I felt brave enough to go across the tundra and get to the road. And it made me think, you know, we're leaving footprints for the future, our future generations, for them to follow. And I'm hoping that I'm representing our people well enough for them to be brave enough to go the distance and to do what they feel is good for them. I'm very grateful to be living my passion today. I absolutely love long distance running, and it takes a lot of bravery. So I hope that what I'm doing today will leave footprints for the future to follow. I am training for more 100-milers in Leadville. There, you know, the running industry, there's a change happening today that involves diversity, equity, and inclusion races that I often go to are those that are very open, like Broken Arrow Sparrows. They're very, I feel very welcome there. They not only highlight the accomplished or more successful runners, but they include everyone like me. I feel very welcomed and accepted in that community. Sorry. it's not easy for me to be so open, so I apologize if I pause. Kind of lost my train of thought. Sorry. Barb.
So, Carol, did you want me to take it over, or did you want to continue?
I think you could take over now.
Okay, sure. And chime in anytime, Carol, if it comes back to you what you were aiming toward. So I just want, this is not over, of course, but Carol, I want to thank you. I want to say thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for your inspirational story and messages, and for your examples of goal setting and following through without giving up. That without giving up is a very important part. And thank you for your important work. So we have a couple of questions. Would you share, Carol, some of the activities that you've sponsored through your work?
Yeah, definitely. So it kind of brought me back to the point I had wanted to say. During the pandemic, when there were a whole lot of races happening, I decided to run all 3 of the roads in Nome. And when I ran the Teller Road, it's a 73-mile road from Teller to Nome. When I completed that, the mayor of Teller contacted me and asked if we can organize a marathon in Teller in honor of the message I was carrying, and that message was on mental health awareness and suicide prevention. And it was an honor to do that next year. So now this year will be the 2nd annual Nisqually Marathon in Teller. And I'm really looking forward to that. Another thing I wanted to say was that when I ran the Council Road, it's another 73-mile road. A group of kids came out to join me for a little bit, and it was very empowering to see them running with me. And still today, I see those kids out there asking me if I remember them running with me. And I get people telling me that they often say how they ran Council Road with me. And this is why I run, is to give hope for the future. Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. I remember seeing photographs in an article about that that teller activity in the Nome Nugget newspaper. So I will give you 2 questions at a time right now because one I think is very short. The first one is, what was the name of the inclusive race that you were talking about? And also the second question, the next question is, you've talked a little bit about feeling uncomfortable becoming a runner as an indigenous woman, breaking down some barriers. What opportunities have opened up to you as an indigenous runner?
Great question. So the inclusive race is called the Broken Arrow Sky Race. It's in Lake Tahoe. And they're actually gonna feature me in a video, so I'm really looking forward to getting down there, running that race, and being a voice for our people. And can you repeat that second question? Sorry.
Sure. It was, you've talked a little about feeling uncomfortable becoming a runner as an indigenous woman, breaking down some barriers. What opportunities have opened up to you as an indigenous runner?
So there's a group called the Native Women Running, and they've been very resourceful for me and very inspiring to me to see other Native women runners. And they've actually kind of not sponsored, but advocated for me to run in very difficult to get into races where you have to put your name into a lottery and get picked, or be a very successful runner, which I'm not sure if I could ever be a very fast runner. I could definitely try if I work harder. But they've helped me get into very difficult to get into races, to sorry, to, I don't know, I'm kind of losing my train of thought, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that sounds very challenging. It sounds difficult to get into some races. And it sounds like some have very high level requirements for people to even consider. So your tenacity is impressive. So I wanted to share also some of the comments in the chat bar have been awesome. Wow, so awesome. Thank you for being here. And the next question is, the person wrote, I am a runner too, and like you, it is my best therapy. However, I cannot imagine running one step further when I've completed a marathon. Can you talk about what is different after the 26.2 mark? What keeps you going once you are completely spent?
You know, when I first started running far, I would just focused on the next step I had, just focused on keeping one foot in front of the other. And it's not easy at all. You get into these really dark moments where you don't want to go anymore. Like, I during the 3 roads I did, there were many times where I wanted to just stop and get in the car, but I thought about what I was running for, and I thought about the finish line and how I would feel when I get there, because I know that when I'm doing these difficult runs, that feeling, it doesn't last long. It doesn't last long. And just finishing, I completely forgot how hard it was, because the joy I get, I can't even describe it. It's not easy, but it's very rewarding, I think.
Thank you, Carol. There's definitely something about choosing to be passionate about something that is so exciting to you or to me, and to that gives you such a feeling of accomplishment. And the other part of it to me is what you keep talking about, which is you can set a goal. It doesn't mean it's going to happen the way you think it's going to. Sometimes it might take a couple tries, sometimes it might take a couple years, sometimes it might take 10 tries. And then I have another question that relates to the question that earlier about being an Indigenous woman. What advice do you have for others who are entering a field where there isn't much representation?
So, representation is very important. And you know, in the beginning, I often felt very alone. But then I thought what helped me get through that feeling was how I felt my ancestors were behind me and the future was in front of me. And what gave me hope was that I'm out here hopefully inspiring other Indigenous kids, and paving the way for them, helping them feel brave. I think seeing someone who looks like you out there doing these incredible things is what we need right now. We need great role models. And when I feel alone or I think about those who are doing this for. So
Thank you, Carol. I completely agree with you, and I hear what you're saying when it's the people that came before us who enabled us to be so strong in knowing who we are, where we come from, and in working hard to accomplish what it is we set out to do. I have a comment and another question. Somebody wrote in the chat bar, I used to love running after high school. It is a good therapy. I need to get back into running again. You are an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your story. And a question is, what goals are still on your list?
So I haven't stopped being obsessed with how much further I could go. The farthest I've gone is 100 miles. I definitely want to break that barrier and see if I could do over 100 miles. A very big goal of mine is I've always been an Iditarod fan, so I would like to do the Iditarod Trail Invitational. There's a 350-mile walk. If that's a goal of mine, and I don't know, we'll see if I want to keep going after that. So
Thank you, Carol. I think the next two questions relate to what you just said. Another person asked if you could create a race that would feel really welcoming and good for Indigenous peoples, what would it be like? Or maybe even a running group rather than a race. Have you thought of that?
you know, I've never started a running group. I've ran in group, but definitely it would be great to be more races in our region, and we have, let's see, we have the Cape Nome Marathon put on by my friend who's also a Native woman. And then we have that new Teller Marathon named after my epic name, the Nascomi Marathon. I it would be very nice to see more races and possibly explaining our history of how our people were endurance athletes. I think that's something I would like to see.
And okay, so I feel like the questions are all related because this one is sort of related to what you were just talking about also. So the question is there anything people can do who are already in the field to make it more inclusive and to help people feel more included?
You know, I think having more stories of people with different backgrounds, not only having stories of successful people, because that will like filter diversity. It would be great to see more like stories and hearing the voices of a different range of people. And I think the running industry is doing a lot better at it.
Yeah, Carol, we totally agree with you. Storytelling is very important to many Indigenous and Alaska Native communities. It's a way of connecting us to the people before us. It's a way of enabling us to be connected to the people who are coming in the future. And storytelling builds relationships. It teaches behavior. It teaches values. It really connects people. There, you can't emphasize the importance of storytelling enough. So another question, somebody asked, would you repeat what you said about your Yupik name?
The Yupik name is Muskogumee, and I can spell it out in the chat really quick. Masqughmii. And Muskogumee, it means the clan of Muskok, and Muskok is a hill on St. Lawrence Island.
Thank you, Carol. And then one more question, and this is from me. I'm impressed. I'm so impressed with your reactions to people who make assumptions about you. It would be easy, to when people make assumptions about a person, it would be easy just to have the reaction of being upset and angry, but that's not what you do. What would you say to people? What is your message to people who are afraid to do something because of what people might think or say? And it's not just about running, but there are many times when we feel the need to say something in response to something that has been assumed about others, but many times we don't take that step. But what is your advice to me and other people who can be afraid to do something because of what we think people might say?
I think we all have very powerful voices, and it's good to hear voices. That's how we become empowered, and how we hear each other's stories. I'm very grateful to have found my voice through running and being brave enough to tell my story and share my voice with everyone. So just remember that sharing your voice, it may help others. So your voice is very empowering, and I'm very grateful to have been empowered by those who were able to share their voice with me.
Thank you, Carol. That's one of the most important messages I've heard in a long time. And the other part of it might also be that many times people can make assumptions because they don't know. It's not even necessarily true that they are being critical. It's just that maybe they don't know. It's a matter of not knowing. And I would assume that most people would welcome becoming informed and becoming more knowledgeable.
Yeah, it's very important not to judge based on someone's looks I've been misjudged a lot because of the mask I'm wearing and the trait that I have. For instance, I was traveling one day and I had gotten put on a seat where the emergency exit was, and the flight attendant asked me, "Are you able to assist if in case of an emergency?" And I told her yes. But she felt like, for some reason, she felt like I couldn't because I had a mask and a trach, and she asked me to move, and I wish she could have known who I was and what I'm capable of. But she had judged me based on my looks. And I moved to a different seat, but it's really important to not judge someone on their looks because they could they might be very more than capable. You never know. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So I believe we got all the questions. So again, Carol, I want to thank you very much for being here today. I've always been honored to know you and impressed by your work, by your running, by the messages that you give, and because they are very inspirational. And I think it's important. Like one of the important principles of life that we live by here in our region is to serve our communities. And I think a lot of people don't get to that point where they do look at what they can do to benefit the community, um, being a role model, giving messages. And so I think you, at your young age, I think you have already been doing that for quite a while. So I thank you for your very important work. And we are very grateful that you have shared through Shine a Light. Thank you.
I hope to see our more of our kids in our region chasing after their dreams and doing these incredible things. So thank you for letting me participate in this.
Thank you. And for the participants, thank you for joining us today. Please keep an eye out for upcoming Shine a Light presentations at nwc.uaf.edu or facebook.com/uaf.nwc. If you'd like to share the recording or give feedback, you can do so by visiting the courses tab at nwc.uaf.edu. We will now be closing out this webinar, so have a good rest of the day.